I'm very inspired by the filmmakers who did The Endless, and they have a great brand of films which are sci-fi but also low budget, and they've been basically filming them themselves and being acting in it, so they are very self-sufficient.
In the room, 52 Jokers Wild.
Okay, hi folks, welcome to another Friday with In the Room with Garvin and George. This week we have Sean McConville, who is a filmmaker, executive producer, director, Frenzy's film production company, and his partner Stéphanie Joalland. Is that correct? Have I pronounced?
Perfect, yeah.
Brilliant. Is also a filmmaker, director, and one of the great things that we and Garvin hopefully will like is the fact that they're also sci-fi freaks, exactly the same as myself and Garvin. we just love the
I'm
old,
sci-fi, you're a freak. We'll work about it.
I'm the freak.
Don't worry about that part of it. No, actually, it's the other way around. I've been called a freak half my life. You know, I was freaky, freakishly tall. That's what's normally going on with me. Who's that freak in the disco? I was dressed as a gothic punk. I was dancing. I looked like Herman Bloody Munster with a wig. You know, so freak is a middle name I have for years. So
you should have made a fortune playing Darth Vader. Actually, you could have been Darth Vader.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There you go. I had the cloak. I just didn't have the helmet. You know, I mean, when I was growing up, I remember going to Star Wars, and I remember getting a black cloak. Actually, I had a black flowing cloak from somewhere. I had my big 16 or 18 hole Doc Martens. I had my black combat trousers. I was going for the Darth Vader look, all right. But I don't think anyone else realised that. But I mean, we were before our time. Again, special effects 101 in the 80s. You know, you just get a couple of zips and a helmet and you go out and you do a bit of trick-or-treating.
I did work on Star Wars The Phantom Menace as a special effects technician, but I was more on the sort of R2-D2 height level than Darth Vader, unfortunately.
Well, you're not going to get me into it being like an R2-D2 anytime soon. Well, actually, we're in trouble. Then we're into horror gore films because you have to slice and dice me to put me in and to fit me into an R2-D2. You know, but that I can see the special effects involved with that one. It's a gore fest.
There's actually 22 R2-D2s when you make a movie, and they all do different things and all in different stages of repair and so on. So if they cut you up, there'd be a piece of you in each single one.
It's how to dispose of the body.
Yeah. Well, that's the way they would dispose of the body for you. That's the thing. No, it's interesting because you're talking about special effects. And I know one of the guys I went to film school with was a guy called Alexander M. Gunn. Do you ever come across Alex Gunn in the special effects world at all?
I know the name. I've never worked with him. Yeah.
No, you don't work with him. Okay.
Now, I'm going to jump in for a second there, George, and go, that's like an American visiting Ireland or an Irish person visiting America, and you talk to them at random and they say, you know Paddy Kelly. And the weird bloody thing is, you do. There's 5.5 million people. Yeah. Antonio Flaherty is your next door neighbour. You've just picked a random name in CGI and asked a person...
No. Actually, Garvin, the thing is that, and actually what's really interesting is most people here are from Ireland anyway. My father-in-law he used to go on little trips all over the place, and the next thing that's half a mile down the road, someone would go, Brian, how you doing? Haven't seen you for ages. The industry is actually that small. I think you do get to meet people that you know from all over the place.
I didn't do it long enough to get to know everyone, and I went straight from working. I did about 3 or 4 years doing special effects on some studio movies, Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, a couple of James Bond films, and other studio movies. But I very quickly got into wanting to be a filmmaker. So I wasn't in it long enough, and I kind of regret not being in it longer. But you're absolutely right, George. It is a small community. And they, once you've been in it a number of years, everyone would know everyone. Every special effects head of department would know.
Garvin was talking about America and asking an American. I was working with a guy in Georgia, and I'm based here. He's in Georgia, and we were trying to work on an American Irish type sort of project, and he rented out his home for sets on films. And I think it's been Gary Hart? There's a film about Gary Hart just come out, and it was there. And he got talking to one of the cameramen, and he said, I'm just going to contact George Kingsnorth. He says, George Kingsnorth? You know George Kingsnorth? How come you know George Kingsnorth? he kind of goes, I'm working with him in Ireland. He says, I went to college with him. It was one of my mates from college from about 35 years ago. And that, again, just shows how small the world actually is. So it is that small, Garvin. It is that small.
Yeah.
No, actually, that's what now, strangely enough, this is why I'm a newbie. Even if I use that dirty word, I'm a virgin in the film industry. I've done nothing, been nowhere, have no IMDb credits to my name. I've great intentions. So I'm like 2 years ago or so, I met George, 3 years ago now nearly, and I said, I'm going to go disrupt. But on my own, I can't do it. So it's now a we. We've got to find that group of people that we're going to go innovate, disrupt. In other words, I've got to create a job for myself somehow with no previous history of ever doing anything. And that's what I meant by disrupt people into letting you into the industry. And so now we also realized no one's going to give us a job. We've touched on this in a bunch of our shows. So we're going to create jobs. The only way to get a job is create a job. And that's the journey that we're sort of on. So we suddenly realized as well, if we're going to do it, and we've only got so many years left to do it, well, let's go large. Let's put a lot of work effort in. Let's focus on ourselves. Let's brand ourselves. Let's go out there and create jobs, create content. And that's the journey we're on. And from all the people we've met in the last couple of years, everything is resonating to say, the more we give, the more we get. With social media, nothing's for sale with us. We're going, no, it's on a journey of entertainment, information, making friends and influence on people, creating relationships. That's the journey we're currently on. And we will get to a stage whereby we end up with, well, we've loads of work and loads of jobs, but we're on a journey to content creation. The content creation we're doing currently is social media, but the intent is movie production. So we will end up there, but we are probably an example of yourselves in another way. When we entered the industry a couple of years ago, the hardest thing to find is that elusive investor. There's no one in the micro industry production space that we've come across. They've left. England and Ireland, that investor left. He finds it too risky, doesn't know how he's going to get paid. And on that basis, when the money leaves a certain level of production, then the jobs in that area are dependent upon those wages. And therefore, there's this problem is starting to resonate to us in Ireland, England, currently, I'm sure the rest of the world. But we also see it's not a problem. It's the biggest opportunity for us. Well,
Garvin, just before we go into that sort of area, I'd just like to disrupt you.
We have to get Stephanie in. Stephanie, wake up.
That's the reason. Sorry. No, hang on. Let's just, Stephanie, because I wanted to sort of bring you into the conversation as well. We've been talking about how we kind of slightly disrupted the industry. How did you disrupt the industry and get into it? Tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll get into what Garvin was talking about just a few moments ago.
Well, I'm not sure we actually disrupted the industry, but just by doing, I guess by wanting to do genre films in Europe, that's disruptive because traditionally it's a genre that Americans are very keen on, but it's really challenging to find financing for sci-fi films, horror films, even when they are elevated as in smart genre films. It's still quite difficult because traditionally funding bodies just don't give money to genre films. So right there, by establishing ourselves and our brand as genre filmmakers, I guess that's disruptive, for lack of a better word. It's what is really interesting is that actually now genre is kind of trendy. It's back in fashion in Europe. Yeah. So actually a lot of people are trying to do genre. But hopefully people can recognize the filmmakers who have been doing it for a long time and are really passionate about the genre. I've been trying to do really good to write and produce really great genre films, and I think that eventually our disruption will pay off.
Now, what I've heard, Stephanie, is you see, myself and George end up in these conversations at different times and going, the functional. I mean, my past was an accountant. Therefore, I can talk a language of functional and process. I can also talk a language of budget and return. So, but I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the passion. And there was no passion in accountancy. Now I'm passionate in the product, and the product is the content. But that aside, if you bring back the function and the process to what you're talking about, you're saying use know how to deliver on the function of a production of a genre film. You know what it's going to take in terms of a skill set to do it in a timeline at a price. You know if in that box is a good story and you get that across at a price, you're now talking, that's the pitch for an investor. An investor doesn't really care what you're doing. He says, have you got a Blair Witch? Or have you got I'm not going to see a payday. So the strange thing is funding bodies are not in the business of taking risk. Indirectly, the new investor is a VC that wants to know how he's going to make a 10x. But the thing is, they're investing in more known somethings, which is nearly pension funds, and in the bigger productions that already have their streaming in place, have their sales and distribution channels. The weird thing with a Bloom model is you could spend 100,000 and get an 800% return, but you might lose 7 out of 8 times. And if the first 7 are your losses, you're never going to get invested in again, because the investor wants, we keep on saying it's Shark Tank, it's Dragon's Den. They're going, they're the making of you. It's their money. Everyone else is a bill, a wage. They don't care. It's how do I get my money? But they want to give you the money to explore your passion. And if the passion is not art, but more the genre with a return, then that's all they want to hear. And that's what we suddenly realize. Depending on who the customer is or the language we're talking to, the end customer never gets to see the film unless the customer of investor sees how he's going to make money. So we've got to find not the funding body, but the new VC investor.
Yeah. Can we ask the question there? Because obviously that's the perspective that you're coming from at the moment, Garvin.
That's it.
So
it's where's the new money on the block to get these genres financed?
And Sean, would you like to sort of maybe first answer that one?
Corollary of what Garvin just said really is it's not as simple as the investors want a return on their money. In fact, I would argue that many of them are looking more for the prestige of being associated with films, and that means going to Cannes and walking the red carpet or getting a BAFTA award, and that's a totally different thing. I mean, those films, let's call them art house genre, movies, if you like, or socially important stories and subject matters, which of course should be supported by government funding, culturally and so on. Because those films get that kind of support, the amount of equity in the film is a much smaller portion of the budget. Let's say 25% versus if we're doing a genre film, it's probably 75% private equity. So the risk to private equity is lower because, in many situations, you don't even have to give back the soft money. If you get, BFI funding, telefilm funding in Canada, there is a business model where they get the money back if the film makes certain amounts of money, but most of them don't. So it's the smaller portion of the private equity that gets paid back first anyway, as far as I understand it. And so the risk is less, but the opposite, the corollary is that they're more likely to go and win a BAFTA or get to Cannes and be a part of the Palme d'Or. Any genre filmmaker's challenge is, how do you present yourself in such a way that, you can offer that glamour side of the business, or what they perceive as glamour. It's certainly not glamour when you're in it, but going to the premiere at BFI London.
I'm going to just be the devil's advocate, right? And go, I'm someone on Shark Tank, because I've set a goal for myself. I'd love to be on Shark Tank or Dragon's Den on both sides. I want to be on this side raising funding, and then a couple of years later, I want to be on the other side being so loaded and philanthropic, I'm investing back. So, I mean, now that's a dream. We might write a film and stick ourselves in it that does all that. But because I come from an accountancy background, my language for the last 30 years has purely, for every business I've worked, is money. And all every business was interested in, if you took it back, was what's the profitability? What's the return on investment? What can we get for our money? What do we insource? What do we outsource? What is this industry about? When I entered this industry before George, I don't understand what a camera is. I'm not going to be a cameraman. I'm not going to be CGI. I'm not a functional anything. So the only thing I can understand is, how does it, because I got dragged into this industry by a production company because my son was going to be an extra. And the first word out of their mouth was, we just ran out of budget and we can't finish the film. You're an accountant. Can you raise some finance? I'm going, no, I happen to be an accountant. How did you raise the finance before? Oh, we didn't. We worked out what we could get from family and friends and the rest. We went 2 tours into the film. We ran out of money. We can't get any other investors. We've half of nothing that we can't do anything with, that has no value. And now it's over. And that was my hello to the industry. And what I heard was, what's the business model that will be attractive in micro indie production finance that properly finances the 40 or 50 jobs for a production of £1 million, that gets us tax rate, that de-risks it, that then can get a return that the investor understands, so we can do it again next year and do another film. Because if I get burnt once, family are dead, friends are dead, no one's got their money, it's all lost, I got paid, no customers. My background is from customers. Who is willing to pay to watch the film? How many do we need? How many million of them to give us a budget so everyone's paid and the investor gets the return he wants? So it's not the passion project, unfortunately, of genre or art house is you can do nothing till you have the money. If it's your money, great, go off and do it. But if it's not your money, I own everything until you give me what I need to pay you. So how do this investor type, how do we attract them on a regular basis for your slate so you're doing 2 productions a year at X budget for the next 10 years? That's my sort of question.
Well, yeah, that's the $64,000 question. It's
64 million. You're thinking too small.
64 million. It's the most difficult thing for anyone, even established filmmakers. They almost have to go back to, ground zero and start the process again. The only thing that trumps it is that the last film you made either made a lot of money or was won very prestigious awards, and I'm talking about the Palme d'Or.
But if you don't get that as the first one out the door, most people never get the second chance.
That's right. It's a really high number of first-time directors. I think it's 80% of first-time directors never make a second film, and if you don't make your first film, financially successful and or critically successful, then you definitely are starting the process again, and it's even more difficult than the first one.
And there's the game.
Film is like a millstone around your neck, unless it's talked about, unless it's The Witch or The Babadook, and so on. Unless it's literally, we're talking in the genre field here. One of these films that we all refer to all the time. Every time you open up a business plan for a horror film,
I've had 5 Blair Witches thrown at me. I'm going
exactly. It's the Blair Witch and so on. And
just before Garvin comes back in, can I get Stephanie back into to have, if you'd like to just add your comments there as well?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky question, because I know filmmakers who actually are financially solid enough to invest in their films, but the question is, it's not actually, it's almost as challenging for them, because they also want to recoup their own money, which is fair enough. But the problem is there's no guarantee you recoup your money unless you make a brilliant film, and you cannot. It's an art form. You cannot guarantee brilliance or success. So if you're trying to really striving to make a great film, it could be that you don't quite achieve your goal. And if you don't achieve your goal, if your film is not good enough, then the sales agents won't be a tier 1 sales agent. If it's not a tier 1 sales agent, then the prices of your movie won't be enough for you to recoup. And it's a hard truth. And it's
But it's the most attractive. The weird thing is, you solve that problem, or not. This is the biggest opportunity in the industry. It's how to get the budget, how to get enough budget that you get 3 and 4 attempts, that you don't see it as a one chance wonder because your skill set didn't change. It might have been the bad weather, one actor. It's you're actually, what we're meeting in Ireland is there's an awful lot of new producer directors that, what we're hearing is the Screen Irons want to get behind, and the film boards want to get behind, let's say women in particular, and they want new writer, producer, director opportunities. But all I'm hearing as an accountant is we want someone else to pay for it. We want someone else to take the risk of giving this opportunity. So if the finance fails, the actual film might be fine. You got the opportunity, you told a story, you can do another one, go somewhere else and use someone else's money. But the accountant is going, not using my money again, and we're not doing that again with you. So it's a job of de-risking that needs to be done. and joint strategically partnering that invests in the future talent, that goes, if you want a producer or director to have an opportunity to keep on doing that, they don't fail by not producing a win, then who's paying for it the whole time? And that's where I think an answer actually could be in macro industry could support micro industry production through training grants and funding that might be facilitated from the various film boards. It's too small fund, 20 grand, 30 grand is nothing. You need £1 million productions, not 20 grand shorts.
Yeah.
Sean, what were you going to say there?
I was going to say the normal number one strategy to de-risk the chances of losing money and to get the money in the first place has always been, and still is, even though it's even more difficult now, and I'll explain why, is getting named actors attached. Yeah. And it's more difficult now than it already was because of all the streaming platforms. You know, those actors are highly in demand all the time, and TV versus indie filmmakers have the money to, you know, Netflix can afford to pay an actor whatever their rate is, 50,000 a week or whatever it may be, sometimes more, sometimes less, versus an indie film, a 2 million, even a £2 million indie film. You know, you've got a couple of 100,000 for your actors, all of them, you know, to shoot for a month, let's say. And so it's even more difficult than it used to be to get certain named actors in your movie because they just go and work on Netflix for much higher inflated rates. And it's just as prestigious. So the irony to that for us is that, you know, in working in the genre field, you don't need named actors. You need a brilliant script, a great creative crew behind you, and you know, obviously the director needs to know what they're doing. The script first and foremost. The actors have to be brilliant and right for the part, but they don't necessarily have to be
named,
very well known. And we've studied this. All the films that we talk about, that we reference, that we aspire to make, The Witch, The Babadook, Let the Right One In, Blue Ruin, there's several others. Those films, they were all financially successful. They were critically successful. They played at the best festivals in the world and won awards, TIFF, Sundance, Cannes, and so on. And there's one thing they all have in common. None of them had known actors. So, you know, this proves to us this model that's the right model. Yeah, that's our model. You know, and when you can do that as well, it takes a lot of the pressure off of making the film on one level, because you don't have to play that game of go according to the actors' schedules and getting them attached. And that's incredibly difficult. And then you need more money to make the same film. It makes it easier because I don't think we should or need to do that to make a successful film, but it makes it more difficult in terms of the first thing a sales agent says is who's in it, who's the cast, and an investor, you know, who's in it, how am I going to get, because they falsely believe
that's
that they're going to get their money back because it's got Cillian Murphy in it. No. And that's not true. The only way they'll get the money back with Cillian Murphy is if the movie's really fucking good. Then, of course, it enhances it or helps it. But it's just as possible that some little film over here that had an up-and-coming Irish actor instead of Cillian Murphy will completely outgun the movie with Cillian Murphy in, if it wasn't a very good script.
Actually, you're mirroring what myself and George's research arrived at. From again, it's exactly what's working. It's you're a testimonial platform for. It's a strong storyline. It's a minimum budget. It functionally should resonate with an audience. You're going to launch the next Cillian Murphy. You don't need
just before you go on there, Garvin. Can I let Stephanie just come in and have her
that's interesting, because I would say that the model is great up until the point where you need money from others. Because if you're trying to raise, let's say if you have won £250,000, which is great, and that's enough to make the film with the tax credits, that's brilliant. Then you're free. You can choose your actors, and you don't have to choose well-known actors. That's great. But as soon as you need more money, like £1 million, then you have to play the game, which often requires a sales agent, and they want to do pre-sales. They want cast, and to get cast, you need financing, and you know the catch-22 of
Now, the strange thing is,
film,
Stephanie, you just moved models in a conversation. You're going, am I $250,000, $500,000, $1 million, or am I two? As soon as you start moving the level above it, it's, as you said, a different model, a different level of finance. It's now a 1 to 3 million based on I need to have sales, marketing, business distribution, and to make the same money, you got to have twice the audience. So as an accountant, I even had a conversation today in my own world of going, this woman wanted to double her turnover because she's project driven. She had to double her staff. I'm saying you don't have, your office is already full. You've now got to double your office space. Actually, all you had to do was outsource your current staffing to Argentina. You would have halved your price and had twice the profitability without ever doing anything. So it's now in accountancy language, you're going, it's a figure you want to make in terms of money. It's a return. Now, if you want to make a bigger film as an artist, you're going, I want to make a 10 million production versus a 1 million production. But to make a 10 million production, I've got to attract 11 million in finance or 12 million in finance. So it just becomes who the audience now, if they're paying a tenner a head, needs to be 100 million people versus 1 million people to pay it back. So is it a game of making money?
I would argue that it's actually more difficult to make a really good movie with known actors than with unknown actors. And I explain why, because the most important thing to a filmmaker is time to do something, for rehearsals, enough time to shoot, enough time for the DP to light the set in a great way and so on. If you make, I'm not talking about $10 or $20 million movies here, which gives you the actors and the time, but in the sort of 1 million to 5 million range, if you're making, let's say it's a £3 million film, if you're making that with the Cillian Murphys of this world, they come with bigger trailers, their agents and their managers and legal fees, great hotels, travel, the fees that they need to get paid. All of that swallows up a bigger portion of the budget, which allows you less time for preparation, pre-production, for the actual shoot itself. So you might be making a movie in 3 weeks and you've got Cillian for 2 weeks or something. But if you could find investors that had the courage to say, well, we'll still give you the same amount of money, or you could do it with less money. But now you're going to have, instead of shooting over 3 weeks, you're going to shoot over 5 weeks. And you're going to have time to find the right actors who are brilliant and right for the part. You're going to have, you can build a little set here and there. You can do all the things you need to do that it ends up what makes a film good. It's, we always say that an elevated film is a film that's made by a director. The content is the same as another horror film, let's say a slasher or a gothic ghost story. The content's the same. What's different in an elevated genre film is that the director and their team care about every single aspect of making the movie. They care about the script, the cast, the production design, cinematography, props. Every single thing is important to get right in order to have the potentiality of making, that breakout.
What's popped into my mind, Sean, is, I don't know, I've no context. I'm just at the thinking of the Carry On movies of the past, and not the Carry Ons, but the other. There was a bunch of Carry On horrors, I think. Maybe there was, and it's a Hammersmiths. But
it's a Hammer House.
Based on what you're just saying, you're going, indirectly, we want a passion budget. What we want is a passion budget of an investor type that wraps around a micro production machine. The machine is a close-knit group of 40 people that, it's the full production team, and what changes is the story in the box, as they say, and we're going to, and the actors, so the story in the box changes, therefore the actors will change, the locations will change, but the production team are a close-knit team that get the payday, they get to work on the next genre, the next one they want, they got continuity, because they have this breathing space that we can finance it, do the right art, and we know we'll get paid because what's in the box is going to be translated. The passion will be seen, the art will be seen, and the opportunity and chance will be given. If you move above this 1 million, 2 million mark, you're in a total different industry. You're in a job. You're not your production house of frenzy films doing your own thing. The danger is, you could go 3-5 million and you've lost the model.
Even £1 million and still be asked to bring cast.
Yeah.
I don't like,
Yeah.
that's the, even at a lower, it's still a low
And
budget
for the
film.
sales agents,
Yeah.
I get why the sales agents, they want, if you give them a film with someone that's been in Doctor Who or Game of Thrones, they can use that as spin at the film markets to sell it, and they get their cut. But it doesn't. If you gave them a film that was better, they would actually do better with it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
They would get it.
I remember a situation.
Prestigious projects.
I remember a situation a good few, nearly 20 years ago now, where we had a little project that started off very small, and we had a cast for it, and we had everything else. Then we had somebody else come on board that said they could get the money and this, that, and the other. And at every meeting I went to with that producer or executive, the budget suddenly tripled and tripled again and tripled again. And before we knew it, what happened was I no longer was involved in the project. Neither were the cast that were involved in the project that had been cast for it. It'd gone into some other world that none of us were part of. And in the end, because it was taken out of all our control, I had to stop the movie. because literally all the aspirations, all the people that were involved were suddenly no longer involved, and it simply just become a totally different film. And the only reason I was able to take it back was because I owned the script, or at least I was working with the person that owned it, and we could take the script away to take it in a different direction. And that was because money was getting involved, and people's aspirations were getting bigger and bigger, and all these other actors were getting involved. And all of a sudden, it just blew up into something that it should never have been. It should have been a vehicle to help launch people into their careers. And all of a sudden, it had gone into a different world.
Yeah, to be fair, at times you start out wanted to make a very low budget film, and then actually you realize you can't make it for that budget. You can't do it justice. And even with Shaun's The Last Moon, which is a low budget film, but when we started out working on a project, it was meant to be a tiny, tiny budget. And then as we were doing the estimates, working on EVFX, SFX, talking to labs, we realized, okay, there is it's not as doable for £250,000 and as we thought.
Now, actually, Stephanie, you've just entered into my language of accountancy and the budget controller. What it is the minimum viable product. In business language, you're going, when I priced up what the others should have had as a budget, it should have been $750,000, and what they had was 80 grand, because they were pricing it based on who did what for free. When you put it in the day rate, put in the expectation, put in the fluff, put in the stretch, and this is nonsense. They've left half the costs out. Actually, if we put in the sales and distribution and the marketing, they've left out 30% of the entire budget, because you're now depending on, we've done something and depending on a third party that we get paid, or investor gets paid and back on a sales and distribution that has a bunch of things in his bag that may or may not push ours. So it becomes, what we've decided to do is, how much of the process are you control of? As a production, because social media and the world has become smaller, and you can get access to the end channels yourself or self-publish, actually 16-year-old YouTubers are doing better. So on this basis, we don't need to go the old legacy of sales and distribution. You can own the end-to-end control process and go, you need an awful lot less to pay back that investor, especially if the distributor is taking 50% of it. He's costing you half. So, we can bypass him, because if you already have the quality story and you've got the answer in there, the route to market is there's different routes to market, and the normal routes are harder. They're giving you less anyway.
That, Garvin, compared to YouTube content creators and so on, is YouTube content creators can make a lot of money with their content, because it's basically like a mini documentary sized crew. When you're making a feature film and a genre film, and there's some action and there's stunts and prosthetics and production design, all the things you need to do this really well, you need a crew. You need a crew of anything to do it properly at the level I certainly want to make films anyway, like 30 to 100 people in that ballpark somewhere, depending on the scope of the film. And Stephanie and I are willing to do this for nothing, and a couple of
No,
other
you can't. You got to
people
shoot
in our team,
yourself
but
and go,
all, you know,
what's
everyone
the real
else
price?
pays their rent by being a grip or a boom operator or whatever it may be, and they're not going to get the glory either when you win some award at Cannes, if you do. You know, so you need a certain amount. There's a sort of threshold where you need to be able to pay everyone at least minimum wage, and that's if you're only working with, you know, up and comers, who, you know, because any key crew person or properly trained crew that's already worked on a number of Netflix shows and so on, you know, those guys and girls are £300 or £400 a day plus, right? So you can work out that if you're making a movie with a crew of 100 and you've got that's like £40,000 a day, just that before you start.
What was really,
you're talking my old language.
That's the challenge is how do you make the film on the best budget possible that allows the filmmaker to get the right team and make the best.
Well, see, that's the catch-22.
Well, can I get Stephanie just in there again?
I guess unless you are self-sufficient, truly self-sufficient as a filmmaker, because I'm very inspired by the filmmakers who did The Endless, and you know, they have a great brand of films which are sci-fi but also low budget, and they've been basically filming them themselves and being acting in it. So they are very self-sufficient, and they made amazing movies that are doing really well. Now they're also able to do to have access to more funding in order to do bigger films. But they really gave themselves the opportunity to explore their brand and their voice. And I think that's quite rare, that they've been sustaining an incredible model. And all their films are very successful on Amazon and Netflix. So I think there's something to look into for filmmakers. Like, you know, they made 4 or 5 movies that were tonally similar, with like 4 or 5 actors, and very clever. It was very clever.
Now
concept.
you've just gave the other part of the model, because that's what George and myself were talking about before. You know, what our model entails is, what's the minimum? What's the minimum number of actors? What's the minimum strong story? What's the minimum budget? But it has to be a market day rate. You go, and we came up, as you said, with 40 people. The minimum, we forget about the company structure, just to have the production side of it, you know, with the right cast and crew, assuming 5 actors and a couple of extras, and keeping things to minimum locations. There is no escaping a $750,000 budget based on market day rate of 15 weeks and a crew of 40 actors, you know, an actor mixed crew and bits and pieces of moving parts. And that's what frightens most people, because anything less than that is someone trying to do it on their handheld camera phone, someone trying to do it because they don't have a mortgage. If everyone in that machine has a life, a mortgage, bills, they need to be paid, they need a job, they need a market day rate. Everyone in there has a job. The holistic is, we're the producers, we're the executors, we're willing to finance, we're willing to get the accolades, we're willing to forego, but 40 people need to be paid.
And it's the only way that they can get the experience as well to build their careers through that kind of model.
Absolutely. It's possible to find those people that are willing to work for free because they want the higher credit than they've already got. They like you as filmmakers, they like your script. You know, they've just spent 6 months earning a fortune on Netflix, and they're happy to take a month off to get behind it. You know, it's possible to find that crew. It's a lot more exhausting, because you might have to interview and be passionate to 10 DOPs before one says, okay, fine, I believe in you, I'm going to do it, I'm going to work for a month for free. Whereas if you're paying even a basic rate, you know, you put an ad somewhere and you'll have 10 DPs knocking on your door. So it's a lot more exhausting to do this low budget model, because you're forever, you know, selling and presenting yourself and your passion for your project. Yeah. And the problem is you can't sustain it.
Yeah, Sean, I think the language we're arriving at is, we're not interested in low budget. We're interested in minimum budget. We're interested in what's the minimum the budget needs to be to deliver the story I want to make. That's the budget. How do I attract that money and show that everyone's going to get paid, and what's going to be created is this quality product with an audience?
This is the Blumhouse model. I don't know if you're familiar with
probably,
Blumhouse. The Blumhouse model is amazing, and it's very successful because they happen to have a studio distribution deal with Universal, so they also don't have to worry about selling it. But their model is, they're making movies that would cost 10 million if you paid everyone top rates, especially the actors. They're making them for 1 to 2 million, and everyone's getting scale, including the actors, but they own a portion of the equity. So then when Universal release it and it grosses $100 million, as many of them do, they get more than they otherwise would have got. That's an amazing model. But, in their case, it's proven over and over. But if we could build a model where, we pay everyone the sort of minimum wage and they're behind us because they love the scripts, they love the team behind it. And we can show how when the film does earn revenue, that's when you're going to get paid, and that's normally called deferred, and it's bullshit, and you never get it.
Never get it.
But I believe there is a sort of model where you can have a portion of it where first dollar in, after the sales agents have taken their marketing fees and their commission fees, the rest goes into collection and management account, and everyone in the key positions, especially that was involved in that film, gets a percentage of that revenue. It's a gamble. It may not pay off. It could pay off a lot more.
Right, Sean, I'm going to make your life easier. You see, the only reason we're thinking of that is we think we can't get the money. So if we don't have to worry about getting the money, we wouldn't be thinking about that, and we'd be paying market day rate. So the only thing we want to get is market day rate, and then we don't have to worry about after, because everyone got the rate they wanted. They got the what we bought at market day rate was the aspiring, not the A-list actor. So they got the money, they got the opportunity, they got the testimonial chance that the next gig they get somewhere else, they get twice the pay, but you're not the model. Your model is we give you the market day rate, we pay for the quality that you bring, and we're not looking to give you an upside because that's more painful. We just need to be able to afford the market day rate. And then if we have that, you're in the business of a slate that's producing the stories, and you don't have to worry about constantly negotiating day rates.
That would be brilliant. And the other great thing about that is that's our dream. We're looking for that investor.
Well, that's us. We'll talk to you after the show. Yeah.
But you can also spread them over like 5 movies, because if you invest in one movie, it's hit or miss.
Now you have
If you invest in 5 movies, and you're talking about a good team that know what quality work is and work hard on developing stories and know how to get the right team together, and you invest in
you're investing
5,
in a term and a vision. You're not investing in a one-off opportunity, because if it's one-off, it's lose or win.
Yeah.
Now you're going to end up with a semi-bloom by default because your 5th one gives you back to 5. It works.
Stephanie, what was your view on that modeling process that we were talking about there? How does that fit into the way that you prefer to do filmmaking?
Yeah, we have been looking for quite a while for an investor who could invest in a slate of projects, because indeed, if you produce 4 films, let's say for £1 million, the odds are one is going to be great and breakthrough. Mm-hmm. And then you're fine. You're going to recoup your money. But if you just focus on that one project, it's very risky. And I agree with you guys. Yeah. So
it's 4 movies for £1 million is thinking too small.
I'm back with Sean. I'm on Sean's side over here.
Yeah, that I just wouldn't, because it's too exhausting. It's not enough money. It's too exhausting. You're playing in the minor league. Yeah. It should be. We can make.
What's the right movie? What's the minimum?
£1 million. All of our films are kind of designed where they have minimal characters, minimal special effects, minimal locations, and they're designed in such a way that creates a lot of suspense and tension in this type of genre. But it also means that you can make them really well at a very high production value for £1 million, I would say, is the sort of.
There you go. You've got the minimum viable product. Language for Business Strategy 101 is actually £1 million with a refund of 25% tax break. That you have £1 million to spend. £1 million will cost you $750 in England. £1 million will cost you $670 in Ireland.
That's exactly what actually at the moment we are doing all the co-production markets with the Last Moon. I don't know if you're aware of them. NAF in and South Korea and Frontier in Montreal at Fantasia. So the project was selected for all the markets, which is great because it's a good screenplay. And we are really looking. That's our model: £1 million. We have 1/4 of it in private equity. We're looking into 20% in tax credits and build on.
Now, there you go. I'm going to be a terrible
yeah.
accountant, Stephanie, and go. The conversations we were having with a couple of people lately was, as the accountant, there's shortage in Ireland and England in terms of production space for the macro studios and maybe the micro studios as well. There's 500 million queuing up to get into Ireland, probably $1 billion or so to queuing to get up into England that cannot even physically get into either of the countries based on lack of studio space. That money is directed by accountants that are going, if I spend 100 million in Ireland, I get 32 million back, or I get 37 million back based on if it's in the country or it's in the city or the regions or the localities. If I spend that money in England, I get 25 million back. The differential between England and Ireland is 7.5 million on 100 million. It's actually, for an accountant, you're going, I wouldn't be going to England. I'd be going to Ireland if the same studio space there and the same talent was there, because I don't have to earn 7.5 million more in profits based on getting my money back. All the queuing systems out there based on accountants are going, they follow the tax breaks to reduce the risk, given they already have the out based on their own distribution. So the weird thing is, you touched on a 20% tax credit. Ireland is 32 to 37.
Okay, but I'm going to stop. Okay, but we have been investigating. The problem we have is we love Ireland. We're filmed in Ireland. Sean is Irish, so it was always a great co-production country for us. But the problem is, because we are our company is in the UK, that means we need a co-producer. And whenever we approach Irish co-producers, and our budget is only £1 million or even euros, it's way too small for them, which makes sense because, again, they want to get paid and they want their share of
Stephanie,
the money.
If you had a co-production company, that just becomes the ask.
So suddenly you end up with actually a film that could be more costly because actually casting your crew might cost more money. You have the co-production fees. So it's actually, whereas in the UK, it's straightforward. It's 20, actually it's really 20% because it's 80% of 25%. So it's 20%.
25% of 80%.
Yeah. So basically it's 20%, but it's simple. It's straightforward because we don't need a co-producer. Therefore, we don't need to pay fees for co-producer. So it's horses for courses.
Also, I think in Ireland, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not above and below the line. So for your actors, if you have actors from England, for instance, they don't qualify. In the UK, the tax credits are very simple and clear, and it's above and below the line for any talent, even if they're from outside of the UK. So it's kind of...
I think that actually changed lately. I can't put my hand up and swear by it, but I think before there was an issue that all the staffing had to be Irish, but now it's actually... It's once the production happens in Ireland. So therefore, your 32 to 37% is a hell of a lot more than 20. Even if you're giving them half the tax credit difference as a fee, you're still going, the money, it's all about, for the investor, all the people I was talking in terms of people looking for like financing, they weren't talking return on investment and tax break. They were under the threshold. It was already costing 32% more by not being above the $250,000. So I says, look, make it 251, you're getting a refund of 80 grand.
So what's interesting is, again, because we have a project, ICE, which is a sci-fi film set in a bunker, so it could be shot
could be anywhere,
right? So we've been looking into filming in Ireland, but actually, because you guys are so busy, which is great for Ireland, obviously, because of Brexit or thanks to Brexit from a new point of view, and us, and also because of Netflix, suddenly co-producers are so busy that actually we were told that to forget about a co-production with Ireland for £1 million, that we should be filming somewhere in Eastern Europe. Which is interesting.
Well,
because
that's
again,
terrible.
listen to everyone.
That's the legacy
Yeah.
people.
It is terrible,
No,
to
actually,
listen to that.
but
Especially Stephanie, when you made a movie for
I know, and
€30,000
which
in
is,
Ireland. So to listen to someone that tells you can't make a movie for £1 million in
especially
Ireland,
but I kid you not, and so we got the budgets actually somewhere else in Eastern Europe.
All right, but Stephanie, I'm going to hone in how my brain translates as an accountant. You're saying there's £1 million. Now, is that sterling? That could be €1.2.
Yeah,
1.2 euro
really,
in Ireland, if we basically finance it, is worth effectively 1/3 of that minimum is, because no, that's 2/3 of it, 600. That becomes a 1.8 million budget in Ireland if we finance the tax credit.
Yeah.
That then at a 50 grand average job, if you divided it in, becomes like 200 job full-time equivalents for the year, whatever way you want to do it. It's all that money is for jobs, nothing else, give or take. So the language that's meant to be happening here is, I want to bring 50 jobs to Ireland for 6 months, spend 1.8 million in the Irish economy, and get X, Y, and Z done. Whoever the problem over here currently, what you heard was, there's a massive demand for jobs.
Yeah.
There's all the studios have sucked up all the talent based on the current Vikings and everything else that's out there, and all studios are full. But all you're really saying is, if we could bring 1 million from sterling into euro, get the better tax break, we have 1.8 million to spend, give someone a couple of $100,000 for just to stick their name on it for production. It's the language of what we're selling and how we're asking. That's what we find. It's the story of the money. We can actually partner with we can go and talk jobs instead of money and co-production partners. It's about creating 40 jobs. Which jobs, where, and who? We're saying there are 40 jobs in micro-production space that are not the ones in macro. We're trying to give these actors a job which are not A-listers, they're C-listers. So the great thing about this is, if we play our own game of stories, what we're meant to do is that's the story we go play. We don't ask permission. We don't look for partnership. We attract it because you're the wage. You're the investor when moving with that budget they hear. You're going, I have 1.8 million to spend on jobs. Who wants a job?
That's great. That's music to my ears to hear you say that. It's how I normally think as well. And no one can ever tell me that I can't find one cinematographer in Ireland or one production designer. I don't care how busy you are.
If you put up a for sale ad now, I want 6 of these and 5 of those at 50 grand a pop, 500 a day. You'll have a queue as long as your arm, and co-production companies will be coming out of the woodwork.
What's also happening here?
Yeah,
what's also happening over here is that the bigger studios are saying that there isn't the talent here. They can't find the people, and they want them trained up to 12,000 people in the next couple of years because they can't get it. But what the other problem is, that we've also heard the stories from the heads of departments, is that most of them are being they're gone from a job below up to the heads of department. They're trying to find their own feet in that particular job. They also are being asked to train somebody because that's part of the budget requirements to get the tax breaks, but they haven't got the time. So they want somebody else to train them. And that's the biggest issue they've got. There are plenty of people here who could fill the jobs, but they're not recognizing them because they haven't got what they claim is the experience. But they're not going to get the experience unless they got the opportunity to work on the low budget films that usually give people the jump up. I mean, in one of the projects I produced, directed, a lot of the people got opportunities to work on the next project, the big project, because they'd worked on and gained the experience on working on a feature film, which they don't normally get if they work on a short film. And it's that area that's being taken out of the picture at the moment because the big boys are coming in to the big studios, blocking everybody out, and you've got no development. They've literally cut the development side of it for training purposes, for people to skill up to be able to go on to work on other projects there afterwards.
So there's a game
where the problem
George is actually touching on. We're about story. And what we realized getting into our model was, no point in mentioning it, they don't understand it. They're working in legacy space and silos of thinking how things were done before. They're all coming from this old genre. The disruption we were talking about earlier in the show is, you have money. You're the attraction. You're coming here for the tax break. Now, you're not going to try and get the big studios because you're saying you're in the micro space and we can figure out alternative make-dos and create those spaces. So, I mean, now you've also got the attraction to the middle market staffing people, which are the mid-55s, that have all the experience, that do not want to get nosebleed and aren't being given the jobs in macro production because they know they won't be able for the nosebleed. So the actual very people you want, which is our higher skilled people, are here and in England, but they're all on these film groups and Facebook groups going, give me a job left, right and centre. We talked to Donna Phillips of the International Film Producers Network last week, and she says the common question on the entire group of 20,000 people is, give me a job or where's the investor?
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So when you have the story, we just extend that story out. The story is not the story of the content. The story is of the people, as you said, that work to deliver on that content. It's their history, their CVs, their opportunities, their aspiration to be a star of the future, or the ones that want to give back because they're a little bit tired or they're 55. They just like to do an 8-hour day. The thing you actually said earlier on, which resonates with me, is if we had the budget and we can slow things down, we don't need to deliver in 6 weeks. We can deliver in 16 and use the money how we please to deliver on the right story without the nosebleed. But because we have the right market day rate and the crew and the cast and everyone's bought into the ethos of what we're doing. And that is then evident in what's produced. It's not for free. We do not work under for free anything because people have to eat and drink and, be merry. They cannot, if that's part of anyone's model, then they're building in the downfall, because that just means they join the queue with the other 100 that can't find the money either. If you can you have the right story, you have the right aspiration, you need to play the game at the 1 million level minimum, and you don't want 2 million, because 1 million we can make back and make it work again in 6 months' time. We can keep on doing it. But 2 million, we've got to get twice the customers back at the other end, and we're building in a point of failure. So I see you as being very attractive. You got to move from England to Ireland for Brexit purposes to be in the European market, to get the higher tax break, which is 17% more than the 20 immediately. And if the workers are in England, they can come to Ireland and just be part of the crew. This is a game of money and budget.
We'd love to make a film in Ireland again, because we made The Quiet Hour in Templemore, Tipperary, believe it or not, for €30,000, a feature film. It sold to 16 territories around the world. It played at 25 festivals.
It was on Sky Cinema.
Really good. 4 or 5 were really good festivals. We played at premiered at Galway. We have a lot of great memories from that era, and the crew we cobbled together, half are Irish, half are English, were fantastic. And, €30,000. We don't want to do that again.
No,
because,
we want
the whole community.
Where's your A game 1.8 million? You just said it a minute ago. You have $1 million sterling, that's €1.2, that can be leveraged to 1.8 million budget in the Irish territory based on tax break. What do you want to make with that money? When do you want to make it?
With this script we have, The Last Moon, for that budget, 1.8, I could deliver the film without any compromise. Exactly
right, so that's the game. Why are you not playing and pursuing that game in Ireland right now?
Okay, why not? Just because we haven't found, believe me or not, a co-production yet. A co-producer.
Well, we can give you that in the morning.
Hang on, Garvin.
I know a lot of people. I'm connected.
Because at the moment we have £250,000, and
private equity
in the UK, which is great. It's a good starting point. But in order to get more, at the moment, to get more money, we are trying to get a sales agent and play the game. Unless we find new investors, we are open to new investors.
Well, this is just different games. There's different games.
Because at the moment,
well, actually, we actually have to come to the end of the show, believe it or not. I think I think we're reaching a really interesting perspective here, which we should be continuing on in a discussion outside of a recording that we want to air to other people at this point. So I do think it is a good time to end, Garvin, because I think you're getting into another area which I think is actually quite good. But what I'd like to try and do, just to wrap everything up, is that could I get? We've been talking about the production problems in the sense of trying to fund things. We've been looking at how over the last few years, especially, the bigger streaming companies are starting to soak up all the potential areas for production at a lower budget. But we've also touched on the fact that each film should have a reasonably good production budget, which we're now talking about 1.2 million euros potentially, that would allow the filmmakers to fully realize the story that they have. We've also discussed on the potential that the stories that we should be doing are on a smaller scale, minimum location. They don't have to be A-lister actors. And all of these things give the opportunity for new crews and new and actually experienced crews to come back and work at a pace that they feel more excited. Because I do get the impression that a lot of these big productions, because they are run on such tight budgets, it is an exhausting 16-hour day. People are basically crushed and wiped out, and they may not be fit for purpose at the end of the actual production. Whereas on the smaller budgets, you can breathe a little bit better. You know what you're trying to do, and you can work within the scheme that you have. We've also been talking about the problems of trying to raise funds where you need to get sales agents to sell your productions and various other things. So that's my kind of mini wrap up. What I'd like to try and do is allow everybody to have a little final say to kind of wrap up. So I'd like to start with Stephanie first. What would your final thoughts be about what we've been discussing this last hour?
Well, I think that it should get actually easier, I believe, just because, again, genre films are way more respected than they used to be. Just I look at Cannes, and they used to be so snooty towards genre films, and now they are premiering genre films at the festival, which is amazing. So I think that the landscape is changing so fast that actually within 2 years, it could be a very different conversation. So I'm very optimistic. I believe that with our model of making great, quality genre films for £1 million, I think that we're going to be certainly way more attractive in the marketplace than we used to be.
Yeah, brilliant. Sean, what are your thoughts as we come to the end?
Yeah, similar, really. I think there is room for a model in the UK/Ireland to make quality elevated genre films with the right amount of time and preparation, because I think one of the problems with the streamers is they have so much money and they have access to established talent already that they're literally throwing money at filmmakers who don't have to go through that arduous process of story development and pitching and developing their project. And I think when some of the best movies I've seen in this genre field, again, The Witch and The Babadook, when you read the backstories, they often took 5 to 7 years to get made. And I believe they mature and grow over that period, and which allows you ultimately, when they're financed, to make a really high level quality film that stands the test of time, becomes a classic in its genre. A lot of the films I'm watching on Netflix in this genre film are, quite frankly, they're just not very good. They're throwaway content. And I personally believe they're not very good because the filmmakers don't have to jump through all those hoops of sometimes many years to ultimately get the film made. The filmmakers are getting money given to them and say, we need it by next April, hurry up and make it. And you can't make great content in that way, or rarely. The best movies in the history of cinema, actually, when you really look at it, went through a terrible, arduous process, a lot of conflict and drama, and ultimately became Apocalypse Now, or whatever it may be. But just in a kind of a smaller version of that, just the filmmakers, because to sustain your passion over 5 to 7 years to make a movie, tells you that person really wants to make that movie. Yeah, they've been dogged for years and years and years. They've been doing everything they can, traveling around the world to all the markets, pleading for the money, doing visual presentations, whatever it is, often at all of their own expense. They probably run up anything from 20 to 100,000 pounds just doing that. I know I have, just to do that, just to get in that position. And I just think that there's still a model for, there's still some filmmakers out there that have that material that has that chance of success. And I believe that the projects we have at Frenzy Films fit that model.
No, I'm just going to say,
yeah.
round mind up and go, the weird thing is, I didn't want to be the accountant today, but strangely enough, I was. I'm trying not to be an accountant. But what I heard was pain and pleasure, because you went out there and it's 7 years and it's 100 grand in debt and traveling the world. And see, that's back to this life-work balance of, you pursued the passion at any cost, and we don't know what we gave up for it. You got the film made, but 100 others didn't, because they couldn't get that money in the end. The pain, the pleasure was the money. If that money was there and easier, accessible, but at the right quality price, that it's just not being thrown at people for those that it's being thrown at. If it was thrown at you and these passionate individuals in the right order, that you have a sustainable work-life balance, then you're doing 2 productions a year of 2 million and you've got 40 jobs a time. Your output is this. It's the right model. You've got a quality life balance doing your passion job. So that's the journey that we're sort of in. We don't want a job with the industry to be 100 grand editor or senior. No, you want to be, I think we all want to be in control of being in control of a holistic content creation. We decide the story, and we see it from start to finish, and we get it created, but we know that's contingent on someone else's money till it becomes our money that we have excess of to basically keep on investing in ourselves. But we don't want to invest in ourselves and not get it back, because that would then say we're producing crap. So it's produce the right quality, make money doing it, so we can keep on doing it. That's what I'm hearing. But it's all money makes the world go round. But it's not the input, it's the output, and it has to be circular. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, everybody, look, thanks very much for your time and coming to join us. I think it's been a very heated conversation, but I think it's been a very passionate one and a very good one to hear your perspectives on your experience in the industry at this point, which just so happens to work into the same kind of ideas that we've come up with, which I think is really, really good. I know I didn't get to contribute as much as I normally would do, but I felt I was the referee to try and make sure everybody got...
You shut me up 4 times, George. That's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, that was it. So I had my little words at the end. I normally play a little bit more, but I think we had some really interesting guests, and it was important to give them their space and a chance to actually say something, Garvin. So we'll get back to that at some point. But I think we must end the show. So thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us this week. And I do think we need to have you guys back on again at some point soon and carry on the conversation, because there's a lot more to happen. Without Garvin, yeah. No, I think that'd be good.
We'd love to.
But thanks very much.
Back on, and thank you so much for inviting us on in the first
Thank
place.
you so much. Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. And Garvin, thanks as well. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications.